Thank you for joining us this evening. This is part number 7 of our teaching that we're doing on Yahuah Rapha, our healer. And we're going to continue in our study in the Gospel of Mark chapter 5. And I'm going to try to get through with this as much as I can tonight on this session. And I'm going to go back and read some of the verses for those that haven't heard the teaching yet on this. And let me mention this, I would encourage you to go back and listen to all the ones that we've done so far, because I can only do so much teaching on the recording time for my YouTubes, and so I have to sort of break this up into so many different segments. But that's why I want to encourage you to go back and listen to the ones you haven't heard. My YouTube channel is Proclaiming Yahuah, if you don't already know that, or if you're not already a subscriber to my YouTube channel. Please subscribe to my channel. It's that way you're notified of when I do new teachings, and you can be aware of that. And so we want to be a blessing to you and to share the word of Yahuah. Yahuah has called me to this ministry. I came to know Yahuah in understanding about his name in Hebrew about 5 years ago. Since that time, I've studied extensively learning the Hebrew language, learning the difference between the ancient and the modern Hebrew. And so with that said, Yahuah has called me to teach and to preach on so many different things, not just about his name, but different areas of the scriptures, because there's so much that needs to be said. But people want to hear Yahuah's name mentioned because it's been robbed from us for so many years that so many people don't know his name. They just know his name as Lord or Jesus, but they don't know that he has a name that's in the scriptures that's been hidden from us over 7,000 times. And so once I became aware of that fact and began to study this out myself, and I began to see the importance of his name, then I realized that Yahuah wanted me to preach the word using his name where it should be used, and so that's what we're doing. That's what this ministry is all about. So that said, I'm going to read from the Gospel of John, chapter 5. We'll start reading at verse 22. Behold, there comes one, the ruler of the synagogue, Jairus by name. When he saw him, talking about Yahushua, he fell at his feet and besought him greatly, saying, My daughter lies at the point of death. I pray you, or ask you, come and lay hands on her, that she may be healed or made whole, and she shall live. And Yahushua went with him, and much people followed them and thronged him. In other words, they were pressing upon Yahushua. There was that many people around him. And a certain woman which had an issue of blood 12 years, and had suffered many things of many physicians, and had spent all she had, and was nothing better, but rather grew worse. When she had heard of Yahushua, she came in the press behind and touched. When she had heard of Yahushua, she came in the press behind and touched the hem of his garment. For she said, notice she said something. This is her faith being released. If I may touch but his clothes, I shall be whole. She didn't say if it was his will, she knew his will. She just said, if I just touch the hem of his garment, I shall be made whole. And straightway the fountain of her blood was dried up, and she felt on her body that she was healed of that plague. And Yahushua, immediately knowing in himself that virtue had gone out of him, turned about in the press and said, Who touched my clothes? Now, that sort of seemed like a strange statement to me, because the disciples in the next verse said, You see the whole multitude thronging you, and you said, Who touched me? In other words, why would you say that? Because there's so many people around you. But see, there was one person that really touched him, that Yahushua felt evidently the virtue go out of him, the virtue of healing coming out of him and touching this woman. Because that's what he recognized. Somebody had placed a demand on his healing power. And it says here that Yahushua said, then he looked around about and saw her that had done this thing. In other words, he recognized the woman that had placed a demand on the healing power of him. And he said to her, and anyway, the woman, fearing and trembling, knowing what was done in her, came and fell down before him and told him everything. And he said unto her, daughter, your faith has made you whole. He didn't say, I healed you, even though he did. But the point he wanted her to understand and wanted us to understand, because this was written for our sake. He said, daughter, your faith has made you whole. In other words, unless she had released faith in the fact that Yahushua was Yahuah Rapha, her healer, she never would have received her healing. I want you to understand that you and I have a part to play in receiving the physical healing of our bodies that we may be seeking Him for. And that part that we play is to release our faith. And if we do, we put our faith, and there's many ways, we'll talk about some of the ways. One of the ways that you release your faith is by speaking, by declaring what you believe. You know, some people say, well, believing doesn't have anything to do with anything. Let me tell you something. Believing has everything to do with everything we receive. The scripture says that he that believeth shall be saved, he that believeth not shall be damned. Believing has everything to do with salvation. Everything that we receive from Yahuwah is based upon us believing and trusting what He has said in His Word. Without faith, it is impossible to please Yahuwah. Many people try to say that faith doesn't have anything to do with anything. You're wrong. It has everything to do with everything in the Word. You see throughout all the Scriptures, even when the children of Yasharel walked around the city of Jericho, they were acting upon the word of Yahuwah. They were doing what He said to do. And you know, in the natural, it did not make any sense to do what they did. It did not make sense that they were to shout, you know, and that the walls would come down. They did this in faith. Everything we do, if we're going to receive from our Father, Yahuwah, we have to release our faith and trust in His Word. And so, not only did Jairus release his faith by saying, if you come and lay your hands on my daughter, she shall live and not die. And then the woman with the issue of blood said, if I just touch the hem of His garment, I'm going to be made whole. See, both these people received what they came for because they released their faith. And Yahushua tells the woman with the issue of blood that it was her faith that made her whole. Let's continue reading, because I want you to see what happens with Jairus. We haven't gotten to that yet. Now, verse 35 says, while he was yet speaking, in other words, this is going on where he's talking now to the woman with the issue of blood, telling her that her faith had made her whole. Remember, Jairus, Yahushua was on his way to heal Jairus' daughter, because Jairus' faith had been released and declared, if you just lay hands on her, she'll live. But let's see what happens. While he's speaking, Yahushua speaking, there came from the ruler of the synagogue's house certain, in other words, it came from Jairus' house, a certain person came and said, your daughter's dead. Don't trouble the master any further. In other words, it's over. Now, can you imagine? Put yourself in Jairus' situation. He's already made a statement of faith that if Yahushua comes, lay hands on her, she'll live and not die. And then he stops and he heals this woman with the issue of blood, and he's talking to her. And then somebody comes down and says, there's no sense in bothering the Mashiach and the Messiah any further. Your daughter's already dead. Can you imagine maybe the fear that must have tried to grip Jairus, and what was going on maybe in his mind, and thinking, well, if you hadn't stopped and healed this lady, you know, all kind of emotions could be, you know, going through Jairus at this time, thinking about, oh, if you'd hurried, she would not have died. But listen to what happens. As soon as Yahushua heard the word that had been spoken, in other words, He didn't waste any time. Yahushua, as soon as he heard what was said, he turned to the ruler of the synagogue. In other words, he turned to Jairus and said, "Be not afraid, only believe." Wow. In other words, he said, when the situation looked hopeless, looked like it was over, she's dead, and Yahushua turns to Jairus and says, "Do not be afraid." First of all, he deals with the fear aspect. Don't let fear come in. Don't let your mind take over. Because, see, that's where Satan comes to steal and rob from us, is with fear. But the scripture declares Yahuah has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and of a sound mind. That's in, I believe, 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 9. I believe it is. Yahuah has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and of sound mind. But that spirit of fear tried to come on Jairus. And Yahushua said, "Be not afraid." And then he says, "Only believe." Believe what? Well, believe what he said earlier. Believe what you said, that if I would just come and lay hands on her, she shall live, and she shall live, and she shall be healed, and she shall live, is what Jairus had declared. So Yahushua says, "Only believe what you said." See, that's where a lot of times Shaitan or Satan steals the blessings from us, is because he causes us to doubt that what we've prayed for or what we've declared in faith will never happen, because the circumstances look totally contrary to what our faith has declared. And this is where the test of faith comes in. Do you really believe what you say you believe? Do you believe this is the word of Yahuah? Do you believe this is the truth? That's what it really gets down to. Do you really believe this is the truth? As I said before, in the Gospel of John chapter 17, Yahushua said, "Father, separate them through your truth. Your word is the truth." Not your circumstances, not the way things look, not what somebody's told you, but if you will focus and put your faith in what Yahuah has said in his word, you'll see the results of your faith. If you'll hold fast the confession of your faith without wavering, for he is faithful that promised. This is good. I got to stop because we're running out of time on our session, on our recording. So I look forward to being able to share more with you on this. Please share this with others. Put it on Facebook, because we want the word of Yahuah to be out there for those that are seeking to know Yahuah as Yahuah Rapha, their healer. Because there's a lot of sick people out there, and we want to get the word out. The good news is that there is healing provided through our Mashiach, Yahuah Rapha, our healer, our salvation. Thank you for joining us. I look forward to our next session, and thank you for that. And I love you. Yahuah loves you, and we'll see you next time. Shalom.